Welcome to Conversations with Joy podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Conversations with Joy. We have an amazing new guest that I like to speak with this morning, and I know you will love to hear from Angela Grant. She is not only an excellent speaker and a contributor to the grief movement and how we can all move toward wholeness, but she's my daughter-in-law. So let's welcome Angela to the show. Hi, Angela.
Hi everybody. I'm so elated to be here. I was just excited when I got the call or the text to be a part of this podcast, especially the topic that we're covering is funny as it sounds, is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So it's
Well, well, I think you say that because you have navigated the grief world in such an exquisite way. And I think I want to share that we've had some other senior folks talking about grief and talking about radical forgiveness, but now we have another generation, your younger generation, who unfortunately, no one wants to be in this club called losing a loved one. And yet you've been able to turn it into something that supports and helps so many people going through the same experience, if you will. So, Angela, tell us your story. I'm sure everyone would love to hear.
my story. Gosh, it's like, where do I begin? I don't I guess it feels like something that I talk about all the time and it's part of my pitch. But and I did do a pitch competition that was where I was able to share the story in such a succinct way to get people to understand where I am. And so
Mhm.
I will give it to you, my story within the pitch realm, but not sound too silly, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So imagine considering that grief is an actual gift, right? We love gifts. Who doesn't want to get a gift? I mean, some people don't like gifts. It's not their love language, but I love gifts. Absolutely. Surprise gifts, intentional gifts, all of it. And when this came to me, it did not feel like a gift at all. But I was at the top of my game. I was graduated with my master's degree. And then I moved to Florida to be with my boyfriend, soon to be fiancé, only to have that cut short a week after the proposal. And so I definitely did not see it as a gift at the time. It was hard and uncomfortable, and I was angry. Angry, and very much so at God. I didn't blame anybody but God, actually. I didn't blame the person the accident happened with. I didn't blame Dion, for leaving me. It was all God that I was mad at. And that I've come to this, I mean, I know we're not in the meat of this, but I've come to this place to be on this podcast amazingly. It's amazing how time works out and how the relationship with God has worked out, that I've come to a place of radical forgiveness in my grief and can say with boldness and honesty that it was a gift to be able to experience grief, not someone's death, losing someone, to be able to experience grief, because then I know I loved that much. And to know that I love something that much in my lifetime. And at that point, I was 26. So to know that I had the abundance of love in the heart, that was a beautiful gift of it all.
Yes. What a wonderful gift you are to me and our family, and for Dion to have loved you so well that I've been talking about grief before, but only now in this moment am I feeling it all over again. What a blessing you are. And again, to have written a book about it, to have started a vocation around it, to help people because of your deep love. You're so loved, Angela. Ooh, girl, I did not know we would go here.
In the first 2 seconds. No, I was like, am I going to cry? And I don't apologize for tears. And
honey.
it is all a part of it. And I love it.
Well, for Dion's in the room. Listen,
Right.
Dion's in the freaking room. Hey, we hear you.
Well,
Okay.
I I got my wedding band on, so
Oh
I
my
wear it
God.
usually during big occasions. I put on the wedding
Yes.
just to be like, "Hey,
Love you so
this is
much.
what started it all," right? And
Mhm.
so, I don't put on the actual engagement ring, but I put on the band to just be
Mhm.
like, I'm doing the work.
Just bonded forever. Yes, you're doing the work, I'm doing the work, we're doing the work, and, boy, to be available at a moment's notice, which was like 12:30 last night when I got the idea, "Can you join us?" And you went, "Yes." Everything's so divinely ordered always, and, I'm just happy to have you with us today. So, I got a couple questions. I think for generationally speaking, it's be important to have our listeners understand some of the steps you took to move through the process since there's no time frame that we talk about, that's the right time frame. But tell us a little bit about your process, if you will.
Well, as you said, yeah, grief is not linear at all, even though, what is it? Kubler-Ross does the stage
Yes.
support, the 5
Yep.
stages, and I tend to go back to those to see if I'm, like, hitting the stages, right? Like, where am I? What is
Right.
happening? What is this feeling I'm going through? Some people have an issue with the bargaining part, but I get it. Bargaining is basically just questions.
Mhm.
It may not be if you could take me in this. It may just be like the constant rumination of questions. But
Mhm.
definitely, I do believe that the first stage is probably always shock and denial, like
Yeah.
with question. I mean, it may be shock, denial, and anger. They may all happen at one time. Who knows? But
Mhm. Mhm.
that initial wait a minute, what?
Right.
Like, what do you mean that my routine is changing? My life is changing. This person is no longer here. I'm not in this role, right? Because
Mhm.
when we lose someone, we lose a title. So it's a sense of who we are. And so not that I knew this at 26,
Right.
but in a most recent loss, I would say that if we could start out with grace and compassion for ourselves
Mm.
so that we can take whatever comes, whatever that supposed next step is, whether it be
Mhm.
anger or whether it be immediate acceptance, who knows? Or God, may it be forgiveness,
Right.
then I believe that that will help us to move through the process with a little ease, not easy, but with
Right. Right.
guided more sense,
Nice
right?
distinction. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, at 26, I was just angry for a very long time
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
hurt and
Mhm.
disappointed. I grew up in this, world where, yes, both of my parents stayed together, but we had friends of the family that I grew up with, and then now they're getting divorced. And so I stopped believing in love and wanting to
Mhm.
be in love and have a marriage of my own.
Mhm.
And then in comes Dion, and my whole world is shook, right? And I'm like, what are we doing? I,
Right.
I thought we were just having fun. What is this love word? What is this? Now I'm thinking about marriage and we're doing long
Mm.
distance, like the I can't live without you kind of conversations. This is movie talk. This is the Disney movies and the rom-coms that I fell in love with, but not
Yeah.
me, you know?
Yeah.
And then okay, so now I'm in it and I embraced it, and then God took it away. So immediately I'm like, I didn't even want this in the first place for you to then come take it away.
Mhm.
So now I have to navigate being a 26-year-old woman who just graduated with her master's degree, but the most important thing in her
Mhm.
world is gone. Who cares about the accolades at this point?
Wow, wow, wow.
I had my therapist, I had told her everything that I had going on. I had, graduated with my master's, moved to Florida, got engaged, and then my fiance died. And this was in a course of a month.
Oh,
That
no,
all of this
honey.
happened from literal May 8th to June 8th. All of this
Mhm.
happened. And she just looked at me and she said, "The dust didn't get to settle in any of the areas. You didn't
Mhm.
get to fully celebrate or fully live in the moment of those areas. And so
Yeah.
no wonder you're conflicted." And I was like, wow, I didn't think about it at that. But that's where I was.
Yeah.
So that's why I say you just have to, as best you can, give yourself that grace and compassion.
Mhm. On earlier episodes with Melody LeBaron, we talked about the tsunami and how you can be going about your daily work and all of a sudden you wonder, whoa, I feel like I'm going underwater.
Mhm.
And how we just submit to that and go underwater and get smashed against the rocks. But eventually we rise above and it's like, whew, floating and the sun is shining until the next tsunami hits.
Mhm.
Tell us how you experience that tsunami as a metaphor.
Well, I mean, and it's a great metaphor because we talk about the ebbs and flows of
Mhm.
right? And so the water metaphor, which is perfect, hence,
Mhm.
my company, Angela's Anchor. I'm very drawn to the ocean and the beach and all of that. So and I
Mhm.
love her alliteration. So that's where Angela's Anchor all came from that. And then I consider, the Bible verse, my hope is anchored in the Lord. Even though I don't think I was fully anchored in at that time, I
Right.
wanted to be, right? I wanted to find something deeper to hold on to because yeah, we get hit with those tsunamis out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
minding my business and a song comes on. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
I'm minding my business and I just think back a little bit.
Mhm.
It's not even a trigger. Sometimes the brain is just like, hey, guess what? Let's think about this now. Um, and so sometimes we don't handle them with grace.
No. They're
We
messy.
They are. Sometimes we lash out because we're in it and
Yeah.
nobody knows, or
Mhm.
we're stoic because
Mhm.
people that are around us don't realize that where we are now.
Mhm.
And it's hard for us to come out of that. If we're able to give ourselves grace and compassion, we're able to give it to others. I think
Yes.
a little bit better. And
Mhm.
so as we reflect that, I believe then they can reflect that back to us, right? So hey,
Yeah.
she may be dealing with something right now. So let's
Mhm.
either give her space or let's lean in. And a lot of people I, are uncomfortable with grief. Um, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of times why they hand you a tissue because they are
Yeah.
uncomfortable with your tears. Not that you're uncomfortable with your tears. And they
Right.
helpful, but also why can't the tears just flow? Why can't the waves just go? Why can't I just let's hold this moment and say,
You you remind me of something. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I was teaching a class years ago, and I had a biologist who was observing to give me feedback. And when one of the men in the group was doing a personal unfoldment to some questions, he started to tear up. And I guess my reaction was startling to the observer because I went, "Oh, tissues, tissues," and "Ooh, ooh." And after the class, he said to me, "Let me tell you something about tears. Um, Crying is like farting." Give you a chance to laugh here. Mhm. "It just happens to you." And so I went, "Well, tell me more." He said, "Well, when you hold in your tears, you're getting some illness going on there. When you hold on to farts, even though if you're at my house, please go to the restroom. However, it has to come out, right? And it makes people laugh when they're crying. I say, "Oh, let me tell you what my biologist said. It's a phenomenon. Crying is like farting. It happens. Let it rip. Okay, some things rip in private, please. But as you say, just let it flow. Go with what's real for you."
mhm. Yeah.
I bet you
Anytime.
weren't ready for that, right?
Who was it? I didn't, but I'm gonna use it now. Thank
Go ahead,
you.
use it.
I love little nuggets that I can use now. Yeah, I tell people anytime I only have two rules when you come to any of my events or retreats or things of that nature. I mean, of
Mhm.
course, there's house rules or other things, but do not apologize for your tears and do not offer advice. I like that
Yes.
because I don't love unsolicited advice and I don't want other people to feel like, hey, this happened to me, so this is what you can
Right.
offer. Would you like me to tell you my story? But don't
Mhm.
just jump in with, oh, well, because now it's about you, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but yes, I do love that because it is very true. We have so much bottled in. And so if we're able to release and
Mm.
let us release,
Mhm.
why would we want to hold on to so much?
Right.
And when and all day long you hear people, I don't have the capacities for this. I don't have the bandwidth. I'm too tired. I can't do. Well, release. And sometimes that's for peers, you
That's
know.
right.
And so I love that. I do actually love that analogy very much so. So I use.
Hmm. Or how about let it go from Frozen, you
From Frozen,
know?
that's so funny. My best friend was watching Frozen last night. So
Mhm.
wow, so it's coming back up again today. Only we were mostly trying to build a snowman. The song she made. So, and there's big cat. Definitely Frozen, Let It Go. The Beatles, Let It Be. Just,
Yep.
scanning whatever song will allow you
Yeah.
to and
Right. And stop fighting the feels. Stop fighting the
right.
feels.
Feel
Let them flow.
exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Feel
I
all
mean,
of it.
imagine we've only been on for about 30 minutes. What's interesting is we've gone from great to see you at the last minute, and reconnecting ourselves, some tears, like only you and I together can produce that energy. And then to be laughing and talking about singing something. So I
Oh,
think we're demonstrating this is how grief flows when you let it flow and don't hang on to any one moment, just move through the moments. So, Angela, what's interesting is, because we're family, I'm wondering if you have any stories that you can recount around how families were able to support you, your mom, your dad, your brother, your friends through this. It looks like 19 years of moving through grief.
all right. In all of the 19 years or when I was 26 specifically?
Whatever you feel really is a story we need to hear.
Well, sometimes immediate family is not always the best at comforting. However,
Okay, good point.
what I right, I realized that one of the things that I kind of went back to is my parents could have helped me on a test, right? Get a science
Hmm.
project or, get into somewhere, get a job or do all the things. If I'm having trouble and struggling in these areas, then my parents can step forward and have a resource and know somebody to fix it.
Right.
And what they couldn't do is heal this pain. There was no Band-Aid to fix it. You just had to watch me. And I just wasn't in the best place to receive anything. I mean, a roof over my head and food, all of the utilities is a big part of staying alive. But I was too angry to
Yeah.
see any of that as a blessing. Uh, and I didn't feel emotionally supported in my home. And what I didn't realize until I was a little bit further out of my grief and my mom had to kind of pull me back in and say, "Hey, what you don't realize is that your brother moved in for at least a year just to
Hmm.
be."
Hmm.
And I just didn't realize that he was doing that to support me and be there for me. I thought it was just I don't know, I just thought he was crazy. Why would you move back in? Like, you're saving money? I didn't know that he never said, "I wanna be here for you." It was just an action, right? So,
Wow.
speak louder than words, but I couldn't hear anything. So,
Mm.
you know, so,
Yeah.
so that was one of those things where it's like, "Wow, okay. I see how people showed up," but I could not see it in
Hmm.
the beginning. It was that whole hindsight is 2020, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so even with like a recent breakup that I went through, that took me back into 19 years ago.
Phew.
And I was like, I was like, wait a minute. I thought I was moved past, but how does a breakup, which is rejection, feel like a death? Like, or worse than a death? I was like,
Yeah.
the fact that you're alive and you no longer want to be with me is mind boggling. Like,
Mhm.
I went back into that shock and back into that, like, this is what I felt when I was dealing with a death. And so, like, that
Yes.
part looks different because it's a breakup, like, whatever, get over him. You're better off with how him. It's his loss. And it's like, I'm
Mhm.
lost too, right? Because I was back in that space of wanting being in love and being happy and full and feeling all the
Mhm.
feedback of the blissfulness of love. And what I realized is that I wasn't done doing the grief works to
Boy,
be
you
able
bring
to
I'm getting
escape.
chills.
like
I'm getting
really
chills.
be able to step into this grief space and do
Yeah.
the movement that can be done with other people. I needed a full breath of grief, I guess, in order to be able to help people see that grief is simply just love transformed.
Wow. You bring up a great point because when we started this podcast, radical forgiveness and grief, it's really loss of any type. Our political system, people are losing their jobs, they're losing their minds, a loss of a relationship. It's all about grieving and being able to figure out your own pathway to accepting that life is what it is. Situations happen. Now, how am I going to navigate through the situations? And you do have some experience when you've lost a loved one to death. I mean, to me, it's like a deep crater that gets dug in your heart, your soul. And then these other losses, not to minimize them, your hole is so deep anyway. You still go down that hole, but maybe not as deep.
Mm.
Or at the very least, you recognize the familiarity of the feelings around loss. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try to, and that's my platform, if you will, is that grief is not just death. Grief is any loss that you've experienced, any change or transition in your life, is grief. And a lot of people don't understand that. I see grief like that now. You know what I'm saying? Like people are talking, you're grieving, but I don't say it, but I think it. And they'll be like, "Oh, Angela, I'm dealing with this, da da da." And I let them come to their own. I don't say, "Hey, by the way, that's grief." I try to come back to it. They were like, I
Right.
think I was grieving. Like, I know you were, even, and that, like, some people call them micro griefs or griefs that we don't even realize. Like, getting married is a grief. They can grieve their singleness and having
Right.
that change, or even having a baby, their body is changing. Their routines are going to change. Their responsibilities are going to change. And so even if that is a grief, right? Because it's like, I'm gaining this new life. We're celebrating, so celebratory. So why would I be sad? I don't, and then nobody can talk about it because nobody's going to listen to you kind of, if you will, complain about, hey, I feel crazy, but part of me feels unhappy, but the other part of me is overly excited, and what is that? And I've there's a show called Matlock. So Matlock made a return with Kathy Bates. And it's
Yes.
and one of the lines is in, like, I think it's like the season finale or near the season's end. Two truths can be the same. Two things can be true at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
And so
Boy, oof, you're right. It's no one knows exactly. There's no blueprint. Bottom line, no blueprint at all. But we spoke on some early episodes about support, the support that works for us. And so could you say a little bit about the people who've supported you and how they did that made a difference
yes,
in your
and I'm
journey?
so sorry I did get off that question. So sometimes you have to go looking for your support. I had people at my church that were willing to share resources with me, even if they couldn't do it themselves. I mean, there was a grief group I went to at the beginning, and something didn't feel right about that for whatever reason. They gave me a book, and there were other grievers there, and I think I went to two, and I just felt like I didn't want to be a part of that, but I kept the book. And
Yeah.
and I read the book, and I did the activities in the book, or I would try to answer the questions in the book, right? And then I became more of an avid reader. Growing up, I wasn't really an avid reader, but then I was, I had to find grief books after Dion's
Yeah.
passing. So there was Days with Maury, and there was C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed, and so these became
Nice.
my supporters, right? Because
Yes.
I didn't know anybody
I
who
know.
had experienced in my age range to be able to say, what am I supposed to do with this? And then the fact that my parents still had each other, they don't know what that capacity feels like to lose somebody. And so I kind of had to go out on my own. And then I had a woman at church tell me about hospice, actually. Which, you think of hospice, I was like, I didn't have anybody go through hospice, but there are grief therapists there. and I was able to pay on I didn't have a job at the time, so I was able to pay on a sliding scale, so that was beautiful, and that was my therapist. So,
Helpful.
so that was really big, and so sometimes you have to go out and look for that support, and sometimes support is, "Hey, girl, let's go get pedicures. Hey, let's."
Yes.
I don't even know what to say. I just want to
Yes.
you. Um,
Yes.
that came in the form of various people. Of course, you. I call you Mama Love because you brought love into my life. There's a reason that I call you not just my mother in love, but Mama Love, period. Not even the end. Take that out. It's straight to the love. Mama in love. And brought that love into my life through Dion, and you were very supportive of me in that. Um, and I know we were both hurting when I initially wanted to grieve for you because God, to a child. Uh, I can't imagine, right? And so once I stopped trying to supposedly grieve for you and Tommy and the kids, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm hurting." That
Yes.
that
You let
that
yourself. Yes.
right. I moved to Chicago afterwards because I was wanting to be a guidance counselor in a school there. Got a job and I just felt out of sorts. I'm pretty good with directions. I felt I mean, it was of course I was in a new city, but I was like, I can figure out how to get around. But I felt lost. I felt frustrated. And I just had a breakdown and the principal like went off on me and they were like they resigned me actually. And they told me to go speak to the other guidance counselor who I was because we were starting a new school. So they wanted to be able to talk to other counselors. And she said that I was the cake and everything else was the icing.
Mm.
And so to take care of the cake.
I like that a lot. Good advice. Absolutely.
Cake
And so,
was
good? The cake will what? Sorry.
cake will always be cake. The cake will be good by
The cake
itself.
would be good without the icing.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And what's the name of your book?
The name of my book is 2-7, The Awakening of Love. 2-7 is a Bible verse from Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, depending on your edition. O daughters of Jerusalem, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires.
Mm.
So that's where that comes from. 2-7
Yes,
of love.
yes, yes. Okay, so Angela, let me just thank you again for coming on Conversations with Joy. I certainly continue to learn from you and others, and I'm sure others are learning from you as well. So let's just keep up the good work, sharing our stories with one another. And so, how can we follow you?
So thank you so much. This was I can't believe it's already been an hour. That's amazing. So you can follow me on social media at Angela's Anchor, AngelaSAnchor. My website is angelasanchor.com. So send me an email, slide into my DMs in the most appropriate way. And I would love to connect with you.
Perfect, perfect. So, once again, Conversations with Joy will continue on a regular basis. We invite you to sign in, come on, tell us your stories, and listen to these great wisdom, little pearls of wisdom that we get from each of our interviewees. To find more about who I am, please join me on my website, which is carverassociates.com. And we look forward to seeing you in subsequent podcasts.